Welcome to the Trumpet of the last few days. I'm Stanley Farrar.
I'm Robert Farrar.
And I'm Joshua Farrar.
Now, we didn't do any of our typical prep. We have no idea what we're talking about. We're just kind of.
You got cut off there at the end for me.
We're just kind of winging it.
He had his wings clipped.
And that always and it always makes my arms tired.
You haven't even flown that far yet. Well,
Speaking about flying far, the CDC has gone through and determined that various locations are in varying degrees of severity for travel purposes. So some have like a 2, some have a 3, some have a 4. 4 is max. You have the highest chance of catching COVID in a 4. But they're going by the government's official releases. So, according to all the reports, China, there is no possibility of catching the Chinese virus in China.
yeah, you're completely safe. Completely fine. Don't. Never mind the fact they just locked down a whole city. 23 million people.
But it's okay to go to China. It's just not okay to go to the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Which they can't constitutionally stop an American citizen from doing, by the way.
Hasn't stopped him before. Since when is the Constitution stop them from doing anything?
Clause.
Now, on the other hand, while China has one of the lowest possible ratings, Canada happens to have a level 4 rating. And at the same time, certain provinces in Canada, like Alberta and New Brunswick, are lifting all of their restrictions.
Yes, as a Canadian, you no longer need to have a passport to go from one province to another.
At least if you want to go from Alberta to New Brunswick. I don't know about Quebec.
A Canadian passport is basically just a bundle of maple leaves anyway.
Yeah, they just sign it with some local syrup. Which, by the way, Canada is the world's largest syrup producer.
Yeah, Viva Fry was
pretty
talking about
sappy
how
about
they
that
had
sort of thing.
Just so great.
Viva Fry had commented on the fact they had removed the border guards from New Brunswick, between New Brunswick and Quebec.
Now the question is, if the communist state of Canada, which I guess would be the CSC, if the communist state of Canada is starting to lift its restrictions, likely because they have an election coming up in the next year or so, how long until the US does the same? Because Canada is always more radical than the US with communism.
I think there's a major difference there, though, because the Canadians, while they're all leftists, even their Conservative Party is a leftist party. The here in the United States, you've got the Democrats and their radical left overlords, and everyone else, and they hate everybody else.
And they also have an
they're not
election
willing to
coming up
compromise.
the next year.
Yes, but they've already got it rigged. They proved the last 2 elections and multiple more that they could fix elections, so they don't need to take and worry about it.
Do you have any idea how much money they had to spend to rig that election?
Since when does that matter? They just print more.
Yeah, inflation's already killing the economy.
I figured they probably spent a couple $1 billion.
And they can only make so much. The Democrats don't have as much money as people like to think they have.
Right now in Arizona, Dominion is in direct Dominion Software is facing charges for contempt of Congress for refusing to hand over the subpoenaed information and the servers. And Maricopa County's election officials those refused to turn over the servers, so they are facing contempt of Congress charges as well.
At the same time, Wisconsin has scrubbed 203,000 registered voters rolls.
Oh, and it's such an honest election. You don't have to look at anything. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. No, 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 no. You can't look at the guy behind the curtain. He's not doing a thing.
You know, on that note, how many people in this day and age remember that The Wizard of Oz was almost entirely political allegory?
Actually, you know, the author denied that. The author himself.
Yeah, I don't believe him. There's way too much political allegory, and too much of it is on the nose. Really, really on the nose.
So, was he pro gold standard?
I don't know about that. I saw no reason in those books that he was advocating gold standard.
That's the theory on the Yellow Brick Road, is that it was referring to the gold standard, and the silver slippers were referring to the silver standard.
I thought the point of the China doll was dealing with or having too much dealings with the Chinese. That we were breaking China.
This was back in the 1800s.
Well, that was like
Yes,
that was Opium Wars period.
the Opium
yeah.
Wars.
In the, I'm pretty sure his was post opium,
Yeah, I think it was too.
because it was during
That,
it was during the populist movement when they were pushing get off the gold standard.
Well, let's see. He directly poked at the whole don't look at the man behind the curtain thing, where politicians are trying to act more gravitas than they actually are when they don't have the actual qualifications or knowledge to be in their position. He poked at the farmer seeking an education and just being given a piece of paper rather than actually being taught anything. He poked at at our industry completely, or our corporations completely lacking a heart, and when trying to get it, instead they were put on a watch to where they were just more efficient. Poked at our militaries being led by cowards that were decorated with worthless medals.
And this was in the 1890s, before we even hit our height militarily.
And those were the good guys.
yes, those were the good guys. Oh, the people trying to take and enforce their will upon everybody around them, um, and take away people's rights were the witches.
Yeah. I don't really see a connection between the gold standard and silver standard with the slippers and the road. That's just the
That
they were
that's
both
been the
they were both too integral in the storyline for him to be advocating one over the other. if that was a
But that's still
that
the
was the
most
point.
common belief. Has been for
Well,
a long time.
the yellow brick road led you to Oz, which of course,
And the silver
and
slippers
the
took you
Emerald
home.
City, which you had to, and the Silver Slippers took you home. But the Emerald City, you had to wear fake glasses as with emerald lenses because the city really wasn't emerald. It was all a fake.
It's rose tinted
So
glasses
basically,
right there.
so basically, yes, he was advocating for the silver standard, which, by the way, was a terrible decision. We should never have gotten off gold. Farmers just
Well,
didn't
once
know
we
how
were
to
on
watch
this,
their
No,
finances.
I I think I think it was a little bit more nuanced than that because she had the silver slippers the entire time, but it was never appropriately used. Is the whole point. She had the way home the entire time. She was using the silvered slippers on the yellow brick road and still didn't get anywhere with it. So I can't see if that is an advocation for gold or silver standard. I can't see it. Because using both standards at the
well,
same time.
But he was saying that the gold took
remember
you
we
somewhere fake, somewhere that wasn't.
But that's just it. Is both the gold and the silver took her somewhere safe because she was using the silver
No, I
standard
didn't say
on the.
safe. I didn't say safe.
I'm I,
The
I,
go- uh,
I
the
intended to
gold,
say fake, not
the,
safe.
the yellow brick road only took her through trouble.
I misspoke, Robert. I was trying to say fake. And
I'm back.
on top of that, think about it. The silver slippers were forced on her at the very beginning. She didn't have a say in it. And using them, she was taken on both silver and gold at the same time to Oz. She was constantly on the silver standard.
So you think that it
Do you know what
was
the most?
If
talking
that
You know
about
was,
the
what the
political
most?
divide?
I don't think it was about the
You
silver
know
or
what?
gold standard at all. I think it was about the political divide.
Okay. Do you realize that during the time of all the time of the gold standard, we had silver dollars?
Yes, but once again, my whole point was I don't think this was a criticism of the silver or gold standard. I don't think it had anything to do with it.
Well, it may very well have been the political divide. Don't know which. Which there was a huge political divide during that time period.
Yeah,
Well, that's why the populist movement was the thing, which advocated for the silver standard over the gold standard because the farmers got themselves so deep in debt they couldn't get out.
I I personally like to think that the Munchkins was a criticism of the guild system.
Oh, it was.
Rightfully so. There's a reason the guilds didn't catch on for
Yeah,
decades.
and the fact that they just
Run, run
the guilds did nothing but create worthless products and didn't actually help the Munchkins when they needed it.
and was run by a bunch of small people.
Small people with small minds and fragile egos.
That pretty much sounds like the unions.
Yep.
But they shouldn't. Instead of being a bunch of little people dressed in old European outfits, they should have been and dressed in mob attire.
Yeah.
Well, mob attire
And
back then is a little different from mob
I
attire
think
now.
I think the most scathing thing in the entire book is how Glinda Goodwitch didn't, despite having all the knowledge, to help her and all the power to do so from the very beginning, didn't even bother until she got what she wanted.
So she wasn't a good witch.
No, she wasn't a good witch. No, she was a very good witch. That's not the point. She was
No,
a far better diplomat than she was a witch, though.
that's not why I said a good witch. She wasn't good.
In fact, I think she represents
Well,
the allied countries of the countries allied with the United States. They are there to help, but they're only going to help you once they got what they wanted from you.
which is true.
Yeah.
And the U.S. does the same thing.
And we're the same way now.
Then, of course, you have the wicked witches, which are enemy countries, and what they represent. I do find it interesting that one of the wicked witches had what they needed to to leave, and defeating said enemy country, gave exactly what we needed. Just had no idea how to use what we got. And squandered it.
So, shifting from literary analysis,
This is what happens when we do no prep.
you were talking about giving someone everything they needed and then them squandering it. Afghanistan. 2 decades of wasted time. And they crumple like a piece of paper. Taliban currently holds half the country. And is working on getting the rest.
Bomb and rain.
Oh my.
Oh my.
Well, if we weren't, our lives would have been a lot easier if we did. The Taliban would have had nowhere to run. Where are they going to run to? Pakistan? Oh wait, India and Pakistan go at it regularly.
When it comes to the Taliban, we knew they were going to end up being in control, unless we killed them all off. And they weren't going to do total war. Because it was too politically sensitive. It's kind of like we know that the biggest funder of terrorism in the Middle East is Iran. We know that Iran just recently tried to take and go through and hijack a cargo ship. And Biden is still trying to make nice with them like they're more powerful than we are. And give them the bomb, the nuclear bomb.
Yeah, we do need to give them the bomb. We absolutely do.
You need to drop it on them.
Well, Israel's threatening to.
Israel needs to just go ahead and do it.
And now China and Russia are doing war games together.
That's no surprise.
So everyone else is doing war games together against them.
No.
Nixon had worked
Canada
real
was
hard
doing war games on
to take
China's
and
side.
use one again.
True. But
That's
most other Western countries aren't openly allied with China.
Now multiple nations are doing war games in multiple parts of the world. Said it's the largest naval war game in history.
Yeah, it's spanning 2/3 of the globe.
And it encompasses European countries, is Australia, India, America, uh, Japan, South Korea. It's Indonesia. The Indonesian Navy's involved. Uh, it's it's preparing for another world war.
Question is, what'll trigger it?
Well, that's the
Uh,
thing that
wait, go on.
you can never quite predict what's going to be the trigger.
Usually
Because
it's the sinking of some sort of naval vessel.
yeah, usually it's the sinking of some sort of naval vessel. I mean,
You can't say that because, after all, there was an assassination of Archduke Ferdinand that started World War One.
yeah, but what got the U.S. involved was the sinking of the Lusitania.
Yeah, but it didn't start the World War.
True, but that's kind of why I said you can't really predict what's going to be the spark on the powder keg. You can almost certainly predict what's going to be the spark that gets the United States involved, but that starts
It's
the
gonna
whole
be the
thing off.
sinking of a naval vessel. Gulf of Tonkin.
But
But in
but
regards to the
the but when
whole
it
event,
comes to
that's slightly more unpredictable.
and and Chamberlain got World War Two started.
Hmm.
Somehow, after he drug his feet for way too long.
No, he actually got it started by letting Hitler have his way.
True,
But he actually was in power when they started fighting, too, so.
because he was trying to do damage control at that point.
Then they ousted him really fast.
He
Put
should
in
have been
someone who
ousted.
actually knew what he was
He
doing.
should have been ousted as soon as he tried to give Germany anything.
Welcome to British politics, where the people don't actually.
Just like our leadership should be taken out and hung if they ever tried to give Taiwan to China.
I still say Taiwan just needs to be made a state. Just put in the Constitution, in their Constitution, that they will leave the U.S. as soon as China's taken over.
Now that would ensure a war.
Well, it's coming anyway. Why not start it?
Because
Well,
everyone wants to have the moral high ground when it kicks off.
you'd still have the moral high ground. You didn't start the fight, they did.
And the Germans had the moral high ground in World War One. Didn't really change it much.
That's because they lost.
Technically, until they started persecuting the Jews, you could argue at the beginning of World War II, the Germans had the moral high ground at the very beginning.
I wouldn't say they had the
No,
moral high ground for the beginning of World War Two, but I also wouldn't say that they were on the moral low ground either. They were
they
they were kind of
they
level
were
ground.
they were on the moral low ground from the very beginning, just due to how they got their power.
That's true.
That's true.
But they're a socialist nation, so they're always starting out on the wrong foot.
Exactly. Look at France. Look at how. Look at the revolution and how that went.
Well, if you compare the American Revolution and the French Revolution, you have a constitutional republic that is started with a free market system that had a strong religious Christian base for a lot for its basis in law and order. France, you have a socialist nation based on socialist principles, so a socialist republic, and it ate itself.
Well, the big difference was Locke versus Rousseau.
Well, let's be honest. France couldn't become a successful democracy if they tried. Their rats outnumber their people.
Democracy doesn't work anyway.
They couldn't become a
True
successful
enough.
republic if they tried.
They claim to be a republic, but they weren't a true republic.
Even all the way back to the 1700s, it was always government feed us, help us.
The rich have too much, and it's all their fault that we're poor. Well, it, have you ever thought it might be some other reason? Now, I'm not saying that the rich weren't involved; they overtaxed the people, and I'm no fan of the monarchy. But if you take and you look at Britain, they took and had a major shift from um, to a more of a representative government, and with the rise of the burger,
And we're
and
not talking
thus
about food.
everybody had more freedom. Yeah. So the while the French, on the other hand, didn't have the burgers right. They had the socialist philosophies that the burgers were the enemy.
The bourgeoisie, as
So
they say in
the so
France.
the
Yeah, if you ever want to see your nation fall apart, declare your middle class as being rich and evil. Oh wait, that's what the United States is doing right
Oh no, whoever seen that coming.
now. And that's what the
well, I just
bourgeoisie
can't be
is.
helped.
In fact, that's what bourgeoisie means is middle class.
Well, it's
Well,
literally the term burger, which was the merchant class, is literally just an anglicization of bourgeoisie. They're one and the same word. They're the merchants who made their own money and lived off of it.
and thing about it is the 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 ones who are running the businesses, they're still in our country. They're treating them like they're the plague of the society, but nobody has any money if the people who own the businesses don't have money.
Which is how you get economic collapse, which we're plowing toward, by the way. Because all the rich people are hoarding the money that's being printed in droves.
You know, there is a way around it.
Wait for the money to become worthless
Change
because only
monetary
the rich
system.
have it and no one else has it, so they don't accept it anymore.
It works on a local basis. You have to work for money like you did previously. Collect as much as you can, and not spend it. You go to a localized barter system and refuse to spend the money. Take the money out of circulation. They continue to
Yeah, but
print it, but none of it
that's a
will be going to the rich, so they'll keep throwing it away on their hobbies, and they'll slowly bleed out of money.
that's effectively changing your currency.
It is effectively changing your currency. In fact, it is forcing your currency to be changed.
Well, it's the
And
logical conclusion
and
of what they're doing. They've already proven
they
that since the coronavirus started, it's been the largest transfer of wealth in human history from everyone else to the rich. Well, I'm not sure it actually really is proportionately the largest transfer of wealth in history. Because there have been times where the rich hoarded all the money and everyone else viewed it as worthless because you can't deal in that stuff if you don't have it.
Hey,
So,
I'm pretty sure that the largest transfer of wealth in human history either happened in the Roman Empire, the British Empire, or the conquest of the Mongolians. One of those three.
The
Yeah.
thing about it is in every one of those situations, every one of them reached a point where they changed the national money and monetary system.
Well,
Yeah.
because it leads to a monetary collapse. No one group can have all the money and an economic system be viable.
Look at Germany during the Great Depression. You'd have to have a wheelbarrow full of money to take and buy a loaf of bread. So people were wallpapering their walls with the stuff. It was worthless. So they had to change the monetary system.
Guess what we're on
That's
track
when
for?
In fact, it's even happened in the United
that's when
States.
the
Yes, it has,
three
with
times.
greenback dollar.
No, four.
Well, it's
They
happened
didn't
with.
actually change the monetary system with the greenback dollar.
They did between the Continental Dollar
The
and
greenback dollar was yes, and they changed it with the gold standard, and they changed it with the silver standard, and they changed it with the paper standard, which we're currently on.
yeah.
And there's nowhere
The
nowhere lower we can go.
and the when it comes to the greenback dollar, it was an attempt in the 1800s to take and go to a paper standard, but people soon found out that the greenback dollar was worth only about 80 cents on the dollar, so people wouldn't. So it wasn't. So people didn't use them.
Oh, by the way, Robert, there is one place lower they can go. The digital standard.
But
And they've been trying.
the
And
digital
they've
standard
been
is
trying.
paper standard.
No. No, it's not.
Okay, you get the
It's
hypothetical. It
dropping
gets you
steadily.
into the hypothetical. You can print as much
Paper
as you want.
paper money is a physical object that it requires money to produce more of. It is a physical, tangible object. The digital standard, all they have to do is change a number in the computer, and then they've got infinite cash. It becomes completely worthless. And they have been trying real hard to bump us into the digital standard.
Well, China is going to a digital standard. Um, we got tons of different types of cryptocurrency, but currently their stock is all plunging.
Yeah.
It really blows my mind how many people who otherwise seem fairly intelligent swear by a Bitcoin.
I've seen a ton of crypto advocates, and they are absolutely convinced that any moment crypto is going to skyrocket.
So there you've got a couple different types of people that are really into cryptocurrency. You've got the people that are into it because it has already skyrocketed in comparison, and they are there to make a quick buck and get out. They have no intention of staying. It's just another game in the stock market. It's just another roulette wheel. Then you have the people who legitimately have bought these lies that that it's worth something, worth anything.
I mean,
And
part of the selling point of Bitcoin was that it was untraceable. And then, oh look, the Colonial Pipeline hack, and they traced all of the Bitcoin back.
yeah, the idea that it was untraceable, the idea that it was finite in number based on how much you could produce, and the idea that it was intrinsically valuable. Two of those three concepts have been proven false.
Now, if it had still remained untraceable, and people would agree on its value, it would be valuable on the black market.
Yeah,
which does give it an intrinsic value. However, it doesn't
But
have that
being that it's
intrinsic value.
because it's no longer untraceable. So the black market, it's no longer safety.
The only thing it still has going for it is
It's
that there
better
is
to
technically a
operate
finite
in
amount of
cash.
it.
But you're safer using cash than you are using Bitcoin on the black market.
Yeah.
Remember, always in cash, never in writing.
Always cash, never a card, because cards can be traced. Black markets, the whole point of the black market is it's supposed to not be traceable. Remember that when you start smuggling guns.
And learn how to launder your money properly. Filter it in through
Use
a legitimate business.
use Tide.
Uh, did y'all know that counterfeiters used to take and they would put their old bills into a washing machine, wash them and bleach them
To make them
to
look
their
older.
white, and then print new denominations on them, and then age them with heat. That's before they started putting those strips in the.
Yeah.
That's why. See, there's one thing about American money, which is not the case with foreign money, is American money isn't made on paper; it's made on a cloth stock. So it's actually a cloth paper instead of a wood paper.
Most foreign currency
So
is made on
so
plastic.
that's what. And if you and the ink used in American money never dries, not completely. So you can take a dollar bill and rub it on another piece of paper, and it'll leave green behind. That was one way we used to check to make sure the money was real. Another thing is they've now the ink reacts to certain inks. Well, it doesn't react to certain inks, while fake money does, and you can take a pen and run across it, and it'll turn a black mark across it. That if you it with those pens, while a real dollar bill won't.
They've
But
put
China makes a ton of fake money.
they've put a lot of time and money into making the US dollar as hard to counterfeit as possible.
Only for them to want to get rid of it.
Of course, because if they want to
Yeah,
counterfeit their own currency, they've got to backtrack on it a bit. That and all these anti-counterfeit means have driven up the price that it takes to actually print new dollars.
I still like hard currency coins.
Nah, yeah.
Yes, it costs a lot more to make them, but they're harder to counterfeit.
I I also like hard currency in that regard. I understand that paper money stacks better. I get that, but I don't know.
Lighter.
And it's more lightweight, yeah.
Just
That's the big
just
selling
go the
point.
ancient China way, where they poked holes in their coins, and then ran a string through them.
Also, I like walking around and not jingling.
And you've never worn a good set of spurs.
I was just
Got
fixing
that
to
right.
say, uh, I used to jingle when I walked because that was my spurs, not my change.
I don't have spurs that jingle jangle.
As I go right merrily along.
Oh. We are dealing with a possible global economic collapse.
Which I feel that it is. I don't know if I said this last episode, but it is definitely prudent to mention that the U.S. Congress did fail to renew the eviction ban in the United States. So that means either they have to
That
go
was
through
one possible.
unconstitutional executive action, or we're going to get a mass wave of eviction across the country.
Well, you realize that mortgages are on the verge of defaulting all over the country. So even if they didn't renew the rental amnesty to where people were able to not be evicted, they're about to be evicted because the banks are going to move in and take the property anyway.
And the government won't
And the
step in to
government.
block the banks. If anything, they'll step in to
Yeah.
bail them out and give them more money. Because, frankly, the banks lobby harder than the Democrats do. Or at least the random general Democrat.
Yeah, because they lobby to the Democrats.
The thing is that if they take and have all these foreclosures they're talking about, property is going to be dirt cheap.
Bye, bye. That's what you do when that happens.
Okay, Backstreet Boys. No, that's NSYNC, sorry.
Yeah, that's insane. Get your boy band right.
I mean,
I don't know what you're talking about.
Josh, get your 90s boy bands right.
I just couldn't get them in sync because, I don't know, Backstreet's always back. Alright?
We'll put them back to the streets, and because we got work to do.
Next thing you know, you're going to be talking about the Spice Girls.
Hey, we hadn't
I
gotten to
have
girl bands
not
yet.
heard enough of the Spice Girls songs to be able to recognize it by sound.
Neither have I been able. Neither have I listened to enough in sync, but evidently you have.
I have, well, for one thing, I spent a lot longer in the 90s than you did, Robert. And for another thing, it has
A
come up
lot longer.
a lot.
A lot longer. You
Well,
spent. You spent 3 more years in the 90s, and you remember like 2 of them.
I actually remember a lot from
Actually,
the 90s.
2.5.
And in case you forgot, Robert, 2.5 more years in the 90s than you. That's what? A 100% increase from your time? Huh.
So I have no recollection of the 90s. That's not my fault. And you know, I'm not sorry that I missed that I don't remember those 2 years.
But those particular bands come up a lot more often than I thought they would as a child. Especially Backstreet Boys. Apparently, they are more common to reference in modern era than NSYNC.
But if you liked this episode, feel free to hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment down in the comment section below, and we'll see you next time.